Am I the a-hole for telling my wife not to come to my ex-wife's funeral to support my daughter because my daughter doesn't want her there? My ex-wife died a couple of days ago. We shared a daughter, 14, together. Our divorce was not on the best of terms. We were both at fault. Nobody cheated. But we weren't the best spouses to each other. For a long time we both tried to put our daughter first. But after I remarried, things did change. My ex alienated our daughter against my wife. I did what I could to stop it, and I made sure I tried to counteract what my ex was doing. I did fight my ex in court over it. But my ex did successfully alienate our daughter against my wife. This was 4 years ago. My wife was pregnant at the time, so it was stressful when we realized what was happening, and my wife and daughter do not have a close or healthy relationship. My daughter shuts my wife out because of what her mom has said. She has at times been rude to my wife, and I have stepped in to tell her she cannot be like that. I told her I can't make her like, love, or be close to my wife, but she must be respectful. The rudeness was never a big problem, but the rejection of a relationship has remained consistent. Now my ex-wife is dead and my daughter's grieving. My daughter has stated clearly she does not want my wife or my son, 3.5, there. My wife wants to go to the funeral. She said my daughter will always remember her not being there for her and keeping her brother away from supporting her if we listen. She said at the very least she must be there. That maybe our son is too young. But as her stepmom, if she doesn't show up and show she loves her, things will never get better. My daughter screamed at the top of her lungs yesterday because she heard my wife say she wants to come and support my daughter. My daughter stated it very aggressively and in a state of raw grief that my wife will not be a comfort because she hated her mom and nobody wants her there. I told my wife not to come. I said I will be there. And I know my daughter has mixed feelings about me being there, but she ultimately wants me there. My wife expressed that she worried it was a big risk and my daughter would remember it as her not being supportive later. And I said potentially it could. But it could also show my daughter that she's willing to respect her boundaries. That she's not trying to take her mom's place. I told my wife it will be more difficult now because my daughter's mom is dead, and it can be hard to see the flaws in people's actions when we lose them too soon, and I feel deep down that if she shows up my daughter will turn against her more. My daughter sought the advice of the family therapist we have visited over the years, and the therapist agreed with me. But my wife was upset. She told me she wanted my support and that she felt like I was encouraging her to not be a good stepmom. Am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole for walking out of the hospital after hearing my wife's diagnosis? I, 33, get a call from the ER on Friday saying that my wife, 32, drove herself there because of searing pelvic pain. I'm on a business trip until Saturday, but I drive back in time to be there Saturday morning before she woke up. A while after she wakes up, the doctor comes in. My wife says to stay with her, so I say okay. He takes a deep breath and said that from the transvaginal ultrasound and CT scan results, she has ovarian cancer. My wife starts sobbing, but at first I stay still because I don't even know what to make of it. My wife asks what that means for her, and he says that she'll likely at least need a full hysterectomy, and they'd have to remove the fallopian tubes as well as the ovaries. That news jolted me from my chair, because the doctor was effectively telling me that she wouldn't be able to have kids after this, and after years of work, I thought we'd finally have a family. I'm overwhelmed with emotions of anger, not just anger at the disease, but pent-up anger from the fact that I had begged her to have kids since we were 26, but she refused for her career. And now, instead of becoming a real family, I didn't even know if she would remain the woman I married, whether the last picture of us together would be last time I'd remember her looking beautiful, young, and carefree. Because the wife I has in front of me was already a different person. My wife started to grab my hand and say, "We'll fight this, and we'll adopt." But I shook my head and turned to walk out the door. I still had my suitcase in the car, so I drove to a hotel because I didn't know if my wife was going to end up being discharged or what. At the hotel, I was at least able to get out of reactive mode, but I was still so disappointed that our dream of a family was over. I finally was able to get a grasp on all my emotions and feel more like my normal self in that I knew exactly what I felt about every aspect and how I would react to it from here on out. I get a call from my mother-in-law saying that if I was at a hotel or wherever else, I should just stay there. Am I the a-hole for walking out? I admit it was done on impulse, but this diagnosis just sliced my life and my wife's life wide open. I wasn't going to expel the cancer if I stayed that night, but I did at least make myself aware of my situation, and I feel I have a right to be angry that my hope of biological kids, the only kind I ever wanted, is rapidly fading away.
Am I the a-hole for failing the test my boyfriend set up? Different account cause he uses Reddit. I, 21F, have been dating my boyfriend, 21M, for 1 year. We met in college thanks to a class group project. Yesterday I decided I wanted to go to a club for the first time with some friends. My boyfriend hearing this got a bit defensive and told me he didn't want me cheating on him. I thought this was weird cause I've never cheated and have been cheated on. I told him I won't cheat and that I only love him. After days of this constant conversation, I told him stern, I am going to hang out with my friends on Friday after work at club name, you don't get to choose where I go. He finally backed down saying, you're right, I'm sorry. Friday came, I got home from work, I got all dressed up, waited for my friends to pick me up, and we drove to the club. After a few drinks we were happily sitting at a table when a guy approached us. He was tall, pretty well built, had clean dark hair, and overall a decent looking guy. Hey, I saw you dancing with your friends earlier and you caught my attention, can I get your number? He asked, clearly talking to me. I just replied, oh no, I have a boyfriend, sorry. I was hoping this man would leave me alone but he didn't. Instead he stood there, pulled out his phone, and handed it to me. Don't worry, just put it in. Your boyfriend won't mind you having friends, will he? He said, smiling. Did he actually expect me to say yes? No. I have a boyfriend. And if I caught your attention, clearly we're not friends, I told him. He's got a little upset that I wasn't doing it. Stop being so uptight about it, I'm being nice to you. Now just gimme your number and we can be friends. I immediately got the ick and was ready to tell him to leave me alone again. But then I remembered stories of how boys react badly to rejection and will even go so far as to hurt the women they were trying to get. So, I just put in my number and gave it to him. He obviously called me to make sure I didn't give him a fake number before asking mind if I pull up a chair. My friends could obviously tell this wasn't going to be fun, so they all shooed him off. Thankfully he finally left us alone and we went on with our night. Luckily nothing else happened, and around 2 a.m. my friends and I finally decided to head home. I was dropped off at my house and said my thank yous and good nights to all my friends before they drove off. Once I went inside, however, my boyfriend was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, with an upset look on his face. Like he was my mom waiting for me to come back from sneaking out. I knew you were a slut, he said. Obviously I was drunk and now confused, so I just said what? My boyfriend could tell I wasn't going to able to have an actually conversation, so he just got up and led me to the couch and let me pass out there. 2 days later and he'd finally come out of our bedroom and into the kitchen, where he finally decided it was time to settle things. I know you're a whore and cheater, he said. I was immediately taken aback, he'd never called me names like that before. What? Was all I could think to say again. He slammed his fist on the counter. You cheated on me. You gave a man your number. He yelled. I was actually scared of him for a second before replying he wasn't going to leave me alone if I didn't. I told him over and over again I had a boyfriend and he wouldn't leave. He wasn't probably going to hurt me if I didn't do it. My boyfriend looked at me like I just said the most stupidest thing known to man. And now you're a liar too? Wow. I was confused and then realized something. I hadn't told him a guy asked for my number, and my friends have never met him or have his number. I asked him, how did you know? Guys. This man got his friend to go to the same club and had him ask me out to see if I'd actually cheat on him. I know you're lying 'cause my friend said he only asked you once and you immediately gave in and started flirting with him. He also said you tried to make out with him before he pushed you away 'cause he's my friend, my boyfriend said. I was obviously upset at this. Why did his friend lie to him? I never did any one of those things. I tried explaining to him that he kept repeatedly asking and wouldn't leave me alone, but he wasn't buying it. Instead, he keeps saying I was a cheater and he knew all along I was a slut who couldn't keep her legs shut. All you had to do was avoid giving him your number, but you didn't. You fell for the trap and failed the test was all he would say after that. But I was just worried for my safety and didn't want to be harmed 'cause this friend could have easily been a random man who didn't mind harming me. Reddit, am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole for not having my wife apologize to my stepmom? I, 32M, have been married to my wife Vivian, 29F, for 6 years. We have 3 kids. I have several siblings, but this instance revolves around a half-brother Trevor, 18, who lives out of state. Trevor came to visit over his spring break. My stepmom has never liked Trevor, mostly because she doesn't like his mother. About 3 days into Trevor's visit, my stepmom kept making snarky comments about him, his mom, his family, school, his tattoo, etc. Trevor got tired of this and grabbed his car keys and said he was leaving. This was around 11 p.m. My stepmom laughs and says he doesn't have enough gas to get home or money to get more. Trevor said that he didn't need enough gas or money to get home, he just needed enough gas to get to my house. My stepmom laughs again and says I'm not even home, I'm at work, which was true, I work nights, and that Vivian, my wife, would never let him stay here. Trevor says I guess we'll see because he knew Vivian wouldn't tell him no and leaves. My stepmother then calls my wife and tells her that Trevor is on his way to our house and under no circumstances is Vivian to allow him to stay with us. Vivian says she's not going to turn him away, especially not in the middle of the night, and that everybody can all talk about it tomorrow. She'll let me know to call my dad when I get a chance to figure out what's going on. My stepmom begins to get angry and says that Trevor is not Vivian's child to allow to do whatever he wants and Vivian needs to respect her as the mother of the family and that she can make life in the family difficult for Vivian if she needs to for Vivian to understand her place. And that Vivian has no right to let people into my name's home without my knowledge. There were other things said as well, and eventually Vivian loses her patience and ends the call by saying that my stepmom is just mad she can't be a F-bomb bully to Trevor anymore because he found a loophole. My stepmother calls me while I'm at work and tells me Vivian was rude to her. At this point I have no idea that anything has happened. She then calls my dad, he works nights as well, and tells some version of events. My dad calls me and tells me that Vivian was disrespectful and had no right to speak to her that way and needs to apologize for her behavior. I get a call about 5 minutes later from Vivian. She tells me that Trevor is at our house and they tell me everything that happened since Vivian wasn't at the house and Trevor wasn't there yet for the call. I call my dad and tell him that it doesn't sound like Vivian did anything except stand up for herself, and my dad insists that Vivian needs to apologize. I tell him if anybody is owed an apology, it's Vivian. This was all 3 days ago. I'm getting texts from family members about Vivian needing to apologize and that Vivian doesn't have the right to get involved with family squabbles and she shouldn't have let Trevor run away from the consequences of his actions. No one can tell me what the actions were. And if Vivian doesn't apologize, then she's not welcome around anymore. I don't think she owes an apology, but I had a bad relationship with my family for years when I was younger, and since it's improved drastically, I've been a lot happier having them in my life and I don't want to lose that. But I also can't just allow someone in it to disrespect my wife so blatantly and expect an apology for it. But Vivian at this point is starting to feel bad and she always stresses too much over absolutely anything she thinks she might have done to upset someone, so this really sent her on a series of mental gymnastics. And she says she doesn't want to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my family yet again. I've remained firm that she doesn't owe them anything, but am I the a-hole for not having her do it just to get it over with? Update, I tried to add it to the bottom of the post but it wouldn't post. I'm assuming it made it too long. First of all, thank you for all the advice and kind words about Vivian. I spoke to my dad last night and I wish I could say it went well, but I think absolutely no one expected it to. He put me on speaker and my stepmother was in the room with him. I said that Vivian will not be apologizing, and she is an adult who can make her own decisions about having a guest in our home. I don't control her decision making. My stepmom cut in with, "You're controlling her now by deciding for her she can't make things right." To which I responded, "You might be right about that, but in this instance it's a risk I'm willing to take. She doesn't have anything to apologize for." I said, "I'm not going to allow you to continue to cause her or myself unnecessary stress." I also told them they can't seriously expect an apology after the way they acted, and if they did, they were borderline insane. You can't bully and belittle someone repeatedly and expect them be okay with it forever. And you cannot threaten an adult and expect it to just go over nicely. I told them that if they were so willing to act like children and cut Vivian, and by extension, me and our children, out of the family, then we would save them the hassle and do it ourselves. I told them we would be blocking their numbers, along with everyone else. They tried to argue more, but I simply hung up, which might have been immature, but I was just done. I blocked everyone's numbers. About an hour later, I get a Facebook message from my stepsister. I rarely use Facebook, so I forgot I had her as a friend on there. My stepsister is the only sibling who isn't my dad's and is only my stepmom's. She and Vivian have always been really close. She hasn't been involved in this situation at all, so I took the chance and called her. She asked me if everything her mom had told her was true, and I said most likely not, but this is what happened, and explained it all to her. She then told me several instances where her mom had been similar to her and her fiancé. She said she had wanted to cut ties a long time ago but didn't want to be the only one in the family who was on the outs, as she doesn't have a dad, so no other family to turn to. She asked if I had really blocked them and planned to keep it that way. I said yes, and so did Vivian and Trevor. She said she'd call me back and hung up. About 20 minutes later, I get a call from her again saying she had called my stepmom/her mom and cut the cord with them as well, and had blocked their numbers too, as did her fiancé. So while I might have lost a decent amount of family members, I did actually get to keep the best two out of the bunch, plus obviously my wife and kids. Thanks to everyone for the advice.
Am I the a-hole for calling my husband a disgrace after he said my miscarriage ruined his birthday? Trigger warning loss. I miscarried yesterday afternoon about 12 p.m. I've never had a miscarriage before, and this baby was so wished for, so it's all so fresh, and I'm sobbing right now, so I apologize in advance if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. My husband turned 27 yesterday. I 26F was pregnant with mine and my husband's 27M second child. Yesterday I was 8 weeks pregnant. The day before yesterday we saw a beautiful heartbeat flicking on the screen, and today I'm devastated. I was playing with our 2-year-old when I felt a pressure in my lower abdomen. Not long later I noticed bleeding, and I let my husband know immediately that I had discomfort and bleeding. Before long I had passed what I believe is the fetus, and I messaged him, "I think I lost the baby." I wanted to keep him updated, and I guess I was seeking some kind of emotional support. I asked if he could come home, and he said, "Of course, if it's urgent." I said I think it is because the pain and bleeding is getting worse, and I'm starting to feel lightheaded, and our 2-year-old is unattended in his playroom right now. We have no friends or family near that I could call who would get to us quicker than he could. I had to clean myself up, crawl downstairs to take paracetamol, make my son his lunch, and then put him down for a nap. At this point, my husband still isn't home. He was working approximately 30 minutes away and took closer to 60 minutes to get back. Hours later, when I asked, it was because he'd stopped at Tesco to pick up some beers. I ended up very poorly, losing lots of blood, lightheaded, vomiting, etc., and he had to take me to E.D. By the time I was discharged, it was almost 8 p.m. Last week, I had said I'd make him his favorite dinner for his birthday, which he reminded me when we were almost home. I said I wasn't feeling up to it and that whatever takeaway he wants is on me. He said, "For fuck's sake," under his breath, and then muttered something along the lines of, "This bullshit has ruined my birthday." He didn't stop to get any takeaway. He just drove straight home. He put our son to bed and I went to bed, and I'm not sure what he did after. I didn't see him this morning as he had already left for work. He's not messaged me all day, and he got home a few hours ago. It's now 8:40 p.m. and he's been giving me silent treatment. I tried to speak to him about an hour or so ago and he ignored me, and I called him a disgrace. He slammed the bedroom door and locked me out of the bedroom. His mom has since messaged me and said I need to be patient as he's also had a loss. She didn't ask how I was or anything. He's obviously speaking to his mom, but why isn't he opening up and speaking to me? She said I was harsh? I'm feeling utterly emotionally neglected right now. My body has been through emotional and physical hell. I understand that my miscarriage came at a fucking inconvenient time for him as it was his birthday and all. I'm not sure if it's the hormones making me feel crazy, but is it nuts to contemplate divorce? Am I the a-hole for calling him a disgrace?